In a moment of silence, a cat did something no one could have predicted. And it all started with a simple decision that would change everything. The house sat in the quiet of the evening, nestled among the rows of aging homes in a sleepy suburban neighborhood. The kind of place where life moved at a slower pace, each day blending seamlessly into the next. But tonight, there was something different in the air. The usual silence, the soft hum of suburban life, felt heavier. It pressed in on the walls, thick and suffocating. Inside, the only sounds were the steady ticking of an old clock on the wall and the faint pitter-patter of paws against polished wood floors. It was a simple, peaceful home, yet tonight it felt anything but. Maggie sat by the window, the soft light of the setting sun casting long shadows across the floor. She used to love watching the world go by from here, once a world full of bustling days spent walking in the garden, tending to plants, and visiting friends. But now, those days were behind her. Age and illness had stolen those simple joys, leaving her confined to a wheelchair. Still, Maggie never let her spirit wane. She'd seen hardship, felt loss, but had always pressed forward. That's what kept her going. Strength in the face of loneliness, strength in the face of time slipping away. Her body was frail, but her heart, her mind, they remained steadfast. By her side, always, was Whiskers. The sleek black cat with piercing green eyes that seemed to see everything except the ordinary, everyday world of humans. Whiskers was aloof, a creature of mystery, always perched on the windowsill, observing. His tail twitched with the slightest motion in the street below, his sharp gaze following every leaf that rustled in the breeze. For Maggie, Whiskers was more than just a pet. He was a companion, a source of comfort. He never judged, never questioned. In his quiet way, he kept her company in the stillness of those long, silent days. But tonight, something felt different. The air was thick, heavy, like a storm was rolling in, though the sky outside remained still, calm. The lights in the house flickered once, then twice. A soft, almost imperceptible hum in the distance seemed to grow louder, then fade, leaving a silence that felt unnaturally deep. The clock on the wall seemed to tick louder now, the sound almost painful in its rhythm. Tick, tick, tick. Whiskers, usually so alert, so perceptive of the smallest shifts in his world, was still, his eyes fixed on Maggie. A strange unease filled the room, settling over both of them like a blanket. Maggie shifted slightly in her chair, her hands trembling as they rested on her lap. She reached out toward the window, brushing her fingers along the edge of the curtains. The air was cooler now, an unsettling draft slipping through the cracks of the old house. The faint smell of the earth outside, the dampness of the ground after the brief rain earlier, crept into the room, mingling with the scent of the old furniture, the soft musk of dust and age. Then it happened. Maggie's breath, slow and steady, hitched. A slight gasp escaped her lips as she grasped the armrest of her wheelchair. She leaned forward, her body trembling. Her fingers curled into the fabric of her clothes as if reaching for something just out of her grasp. Whiskers, still as ever, flicked his tail once, twice, before his body tensed. Maggie's body went rigid, her chest rising, then falling sharply. She gasped again, the sound shallow, a desperate whisper of air. Her hand slipped from the armrest, sliding, drifting. She collapsed forward, her frail body crumpling against the side of her chair. For a moment, the house was completely still. The world outside could have been 1,000 miles away. Time itself seemed to stop, holding its breath, waiting. Maggie lay there, motionless. The only sound in the room now was the distant hum of the refrigerator and the soft, steady breathing that no longer seemed quite as steady. Whiskers didn't move. He stared at her, his sharp eyes unblinking, as though searching for something in the stillness. The seconds dragged on, but he remained where he was, watching, waiting. What had happened? Was she gone? His muscles tensed, ready to spring, yet he didn't move. The house seemed to swallow the air around him, the silence so deep it almost choked him. Another minute passed. Then another. Still, no movement. No sound. Whiskers' sharp eyes never left Maggie. A subtle tension coiled in the pit of his stomach. Was it too late? Could he do something? Was there anything left for him to do? The house felt colder now. His whiskers twitched, and his tail swished nervously, but still, he didn't move. He stayed rooted in place, uncertain. What was he supposed to do? How could he help? His heart began to race. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The faintest noise broke through the stillness, Maggie's breath. It was so faint, so shallow that for a moment, Whiskers wasn't sure if he had imagined it. But then it came again. Her chest rose, just barely, then fell. It was weak, but it was there. A flicker of life. Whiskers' heart skipped a beat. Hope, or was it fear, flashed in his mind. But what happened next was beyond anyone's imagination. The room held its breath. The darkness crept in closer, and the lights flickered once more. Whiskers felt it before he saw it, the air growing heavy, pressing down on him like a weight. He had been sitting by the window, watching the world outside, when suddenly something felt wrong. The silence that used to be comforting now felt thick, full of tension. His eyes went straight to Maggie, slumped in her chair. Her breathing was shallow, each breath slower and harder than the last. The room was still, too still, like time had stopped. Whiskers stood up, his body tight with unease. He quietly moved closer, his paws barely making a sound on the carpet. The lights flickered, casting strange shadows that seemed to move along the walls. He stopped near Maggie, his instincts screaming that something wasn't right. The air felt off, too heavy to ignore. He let out a soft meow, a cry full of worry. Was she really gone? He hadn't seen it, but everything inside him told him something had happened to Maggie. Something he wasn't ready to face. The silence grew louder, louder than the clock ticking against the wall. It seemed to press down on him, filling every corner of the room. Tick, tick, tick. A pulse in the air, steady and unforgiving. Whiskers' heart began to race, each tick matching the frantic beat inside his chest. His instincts screamed at him, do something. Move. Act. But what could he do? He was just a cat. What was a cat supposed to do in a moment like this? Whiskers paced around her chair, his movements small but restless. He sniffed the air, each breath deep, searching for something, anything, that might tell him what to do next. His fur prickled at the faint breeze that blew through the cracked window, carrying with it the scent of the night. It was cold, too cold for this room. He could feel the chill creeping in, slipping along his spine, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. The room, dark and cold, seemed to swallow every sound. Every breath Maggie took felt like a battle, one that she was slowly losing. The wind rattled the window, sending a soft shiver through the room that made Whiskers' fur stand on end. He glanced out into the dark night, then back at Maggie. His body was tense, unsure. His eyes flicked to the door, then back to her. Should he leave? Should he run for help? Was there even time? His heart raced, a small knot of panic tightening in his chest. What if he wasn't enough? What if no one could get here in time? Whiskers, still pacing, stopped by the door. His head turned slowly, as if trying to decide, to make sense of a situation that didn't make sense. He was just a cat. What could he possibly do? His eyes flickered back to Maggie. The soft sound of her breath, the rise, the fall, seemed to be growing slower, weaker. His chest tightened. There was a knot forming in his stomach, a sick feeling he couldn't shake. He wanted to act, but how? Would anyone believe him if he tried to get help? Would they even listen? The air grew colder, and Whiskers shivered. He could hear the faint crackle of the clock ticking, louder now. Tick, tick, tick. Every beat was a reminder that time was slipping away. His tail swished nervously behind him, almost in rhythm with the ticking. He paced again, back and forth. The question lingered, should he leave? Could he do it alone? His mind fought with itself. His body was on high alert, ready to spring into action, yet his paws stayed rooted to the floor, unmoving. The clock continued to tick, a slow, relentless reminder that time was running out. The room felt smaller now, tighter. The air, thick with tension, felt suffocating. The only sound, besides the ticking, was Maggie's weak, labored breathing. And then, there it was, a soft meow, the faintest cry. Whiskers' eyes widened. The sound was almost like a question, a plea. It was barely more than a whisper, but it carried something raw, something desperate. He meowed again, more forceful this time. His gaze flicked from Maggie to the door. Could he go? Could he get help before it was too late? A slow wave of dread crept over him as he thought about leaving her. Could he really leave her alone in this moment? The thought of her, so fragile, alone in the dark, sent a shiver through his body. His muscles coiled in tension, ready to spring into action. The doubt lingered, but there was no time to hesitate. The clock ticked again, louder this time. Tick, tick, tick. The room grew colder still, and Whiskers' eyes darted back to Maggie. She was still breathing, but barely. She was hanging on, just barely, but holding on. He didn't know how, but he knew one thing for sure, he couldn't leave her. Not now. Not when she needed him most. Whiskers turned back to the door, his body tense with decision. He had made up his mind. It wasn't a choice anymore. Something deep inside him urged him forward. He would not let her slip away. He wasn't sure how, but he would do something. Anything. Time was slipping away, but he wasn't going to let it win. And just as that thought hit him, another sound broke the silence, a faint, almost imperceptible sound. Maggie's chest rose, just slightly. Her breath was shallow, but it was there. A flicker of life. And in that flicker, a sliver of hope, of something more. Something impossible. Could he save her? Could he, a cat, be her hero? The doubt still lingered. But for the first time in what felt like forever, Whiskers moved. The wind rattled the window, a low, eerie hum that seemed to echo Whiskers' rising panic. His tail twitched nervously, and his sharp eyes flicked from Maggie's pale face to the dark world outside. Her breathing was shallow now, each gasp harder than the last. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with uncertainty. Whiskers was frozen in place, his mind racing for a solution, anything to save her. His instincts screamed at him. Do something, but what? He was a cat, after all. He couldn't pick up the phone. He couldn't drive to get help. But then, something shifted in his mind, a spark of clarity. His eyes darted to the door. He could run, couldn't he? He could go outside, find someone, anyone, who could help. His heart pounded as his thoughts raced. Could he make it? Would they even listen to him? He wasn't sure, but there was no time left to hesitate. Without another thought, he padded to the door, his paws light on the carpet. He pawed at the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. Frustration gripped him. He was too small, too weak to turn it. But there was another way. His gaze flicked out the window. The world beyond seemed so far away, yet, in his desperation, it felt like the only chance Maggie had. With a quick, decisive movement, Whiskers leapt onto the windowsill. The night air rushed in as he nudged the window open with his nose, just enough to squeeze through. His fur ruffled against the cool breeze as he jumped to the ground outside, landing gracefully on the soft grass. The world outside was dark, but his eyes adjusted quickly. The street was quiet, the only sounds being the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves. His heart raced, not from fear, but from the urgency driving him. He darted down the street, his paws light against the ground. He knew where the neighbors lived. He'd visited their yards before, and now, with no other choice, he hoped they would be his salvation. Whiskers darted to the nearest house, his claws scraping lightly against the pavement. He pawed at the door, meowing frantically. No response. His pulse quickened. He moved to the next house, repeating the frantic pawing, his cries growing more desperate. The silence was unbearable. His heart sank. Would anyone come? His pulse quickened, and he was ready to give up. But then, a flicker of light inside a window. Someone was home. Whiskers didn't hesitate. He darted toward the door again, pawing at it with all his might, meowing frantically. The door opened, and a woman peered out in confusion. Whiskers didn't wait for her to speak. He ran straight inside, his instincts guiding him, and the woman, realizing the urgency in his actions, grabbed her phone. "Whiskers, what is it?" she asked, following him, now understanding that something was terribly wrong. She dialed the emergency number as Whiskers led her toward Maggie's house. The operator answered, and as the woman explained, Whiskers stepped back, his body still, waiting. He'd done all he could, now it was in their hands. The sirens in the distance told him that help was on the way. His mission was complete. As the paramedics arrived, rushing into the house, Whiskers remained by Maggie's side, his watchful eyes never leaving her. There was a deep, silent relief inside him. He had done the impossible. He had found a way to get help when no one else could. Maggie's chance at life wasn't just a miracle, it was a promise kept by a small, silent creature who had never given up on her. And as the paramedics worked to stabilize her, Whiskers, his body still and calm, knew that sometimes it was the smallest hearts that carried the heaviest burdens. Maggie's eyes fluttered open again, the dim light of the room casting soft shadows across her face. She was still weak, but the worst was over. The air around her was thick with the scent of antiseptic, the faint trace of flowers from a vase on the windowsill, and the comforting warmth of her own home. But in the midst of the sterile surroundings, there was a quiet peace, one that hadn't been there before. Whiskers was curled up at the foot of her bed, his black fur a sharp contrast against the soft blankets. His body rose and fell with the rhythm of his deep, steady breathing, a living, breathing anchor in the chaos that had unfolded just hours before. Maggie stared at him, her chest tight with emotion. She'd been fighting for her life, feeling the grip of darkness pulling her down, but now, here he was. Her loyal companion. Whiskers, so quiet, so serene, had been her savior. Not once had he left her side, not even when everything around them seemed to be falling apart. She reached out, her fingers trembling as she brushed them against his fur. The softness of his coat beneath her fingertips was a stark contrast to the cold, sterile sensation of the hospital bed, but it felt right. It felt like home. Her throat tightened with unshed tears as she let out a soft laugh, a sound filled with disbelief. "I never knew you cared this much," she whispered, more to herself than to him, the words carrying a weight that she couldn't quite explain. A tear slid down her cheek, unbidden. She wasn't sure if it was from the relief of being alive, or from the deep gratitude that came with the realization that her cat, had saved her life. Whiskers didn't respond. He never did. But in his stillness, his calm, there was something far more profound than any words could convey. He had acted when she couldn't. He had been there when no one else was. He had been her silent hero. Maggie looked down at him, her heart swelling with a quiet admiration. For so long, Whiskers had been nothing more than a quiet companion, a cat who liked to watch the world from his perch on the windowsill, a creature who rarely showed affection in the way she thought a pet should. She had always thought of him as independent, aloof, even indifferent. But now, in the stillness of this moment, she understood. Maybe it wasn't about how much they care. Maybe it was about how much they're willing to do when it matters most. Whiskers had done something so simple, yet so profound. In a time of crisis, when Maggie had no strength to act, he had risen to the occasion. He had found a way to save her when she couldn't save herself. And that, Maggie thought, was something beyond what words could ever express. She swallowed hard, her chest tight with emotion, and bent down slowly to kiss the top of Whiskers' head. He let out a soft, contented purr as her lips met his fur. She didn't need to say anything more. He knew. She knew. In that small gesture, The enormity of what had just transpired between them hung in the air like a shared secret. The hospital room felt smaller somehow, warmer. The panic and fear from earlier had faded, leaving behind a sense of peace that Maggie couldn't quite explain. She closed her eyes, letting the sound of Whiskers purring wash over her. The weight of everything that had happened slowly began to settle into a quiet acceptance. She was alive. She was here. And she was surrounded by love, unspoken, quiet love, but love nonetheless. Maggie didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't alone anymore. A faint smile touched her lips as she glanced down at Whiskers, who now lay beside her, content and at peace. She whispered softly, "Do you believe cats have more depth than we give them credit for?" "I know I do now."